Hello.
Hi,
I'm Grace,
and I'm Natalie,
and welcome to Partsy Girls.
an IFS podcast.
And we have a very special guest with us today. We'd love to welcome Diana to our show.
Yay.
Hi, Diana.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So excited to have you. This is the first episode in our new series that we are lovingly calling People Who Know More Than Us. So we have a wonderful expert in the room with us today to share all her knowledge and all her wisdom.
Yeah, so we're so excited to be joined by our first guest in the series because Diana does certainly know more than us. And so we usually start with a bit of a gabbing on our podcast. So one of the things we do is Grace and I will share what we're reading, watching, listening to. So Grace, if you want to share, and then Diana would love to know what you're reading or watching or listening to these days.
Yes. Well, this is interesting because yesterday I had a day where I just really did nothing. I was committing to doing nothing all day. I've been doing a lot over the past few weekends. So I wanted to just have a couch rot day, as we might call it these days. And I decided to watch a couple of the movies that were nominated for Oscars that I hadn't seen yet. So I did a bit of like a serious day, and I watched, let me think, what were they called? I watched The Anatomy of a Fall. Kind of like a murder mystery. The husband dies. There's only, I don't know if either of you have seen it, but only the husband and wife and son are in the house. He is found dead, and then it's the wife is on trial. I won't spoil it if you ever want to watch it. And then I watched The Zone of Interest. These are heavy hitters, but that's if either of you have seen that one, I'm not sure.
No.
That one is about have you seen it, Diana?
No, I have not.
No, okay. It's about it's about Nazi Germany basically, and it's one of the Nazis who is running one of the camps in Germany, and it's kind of just fully from their perspective of his family, and it kind of this juxtaposition of how simple and normal life is for them still while all these atrocities are going on just next door, because their home is right next to the camp. Their kids are growing up there. They have all the background noise going on of obviously the awful things happening, but they're just kind of like in the pool and swimming and enjoying their summer. And so it's really this eerie kind of perspective of how normal life was for them while other things were going on across the wall. So that's really nice and light and fun.
Yeah, that's quite a serious day.
A nice casual day, but it felt good to just kind of I've been wanting to watch some of the things that had gotten nominated. So that was good to tune into. Yeah.
Wow. Well, kudos to you for making it through. We've, already talked about I'm thinking about the book I just read as like complete opposite of that. I just finished this morning. It's called Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake. And it is it was the number 2 to the one I mentioned in our last episode, which was something about like I don't know what it was, a brush with love or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a little opposite ends of the spectrum. Diana, would you care to balance us out at all?
Well, I don't know if it'll balance you, but I just finished reading Tom Lake by Ann Patchett.
Okay.
I had started listening to it because Meryl Streep narrates it, and then the library took it back halfway through. So I realized I had a copy of it. So I finished reading it. I'm halfway through Husband, Wife, Master, Slave, which is about a couple who escape from the Jim Crow era and Southern slavery into the Northeast, which is lovely. And I'm in a book group reading Caste, which is also very heavy, which is why we're doing it together as a group, because it's a really heavy book. Once those are done, I'm going to go back to my light and fun summer romance, kind of things that you can just read and not have to learn or take in.
Yeah.
And I'm watching American Idol.
Okay.
Ooh, okay. I love that.
I wait for Monday night because now it's on Hulu with no commercials.
Oh, amazing. Have you
Love that.
always watched American Idol? Is that like a long time thing for you? Yeah.
I have, and The Voice, except now The
Yes.
Voice doesn't stream on anything I own. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Got to catch the YouTube highlights after, or I guess just not.
just not.
Just
That's what I did the YouTube highlights on The Voice for a while, and then it's just not. And then now, yeah, just not. I don't
It's
anymore.
not. They have that the newer coach on there, right? What's her name? The country star.
Reba.
Yeah. Learning a lot about American
You have
culture.
to love that name, right? Reba.
It suits her.
Yeah, she's
It's
amazing.
So fitting.
Genuinely don't think I don't think I've ever known a Reba in real life.
She's one of a kind.
I guess she is.
Yeah.
Reba McEntire.
I don't think I know any of her songs either.
We won't tell anyone.
Don't tell on me. Oh, that's fun. I love that you watch that. That is quite a good balance of heavy and light and fun and learning.
Yeah.
How to balance it out.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for joining us in our little intro game, if you will. But really, would you like to share more about a little bit more about yourself? What you do and any fun facts, where you live if you want, where you're coming to us from, anything like that.
I didn't even give your full name. I just said Diana. So if you'd
right.
like to give your full name too, you can.
You only need the one, just Diana.
Just like share.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So my name is Diana Richards. I put the Dugan in the middle because I've had multiple names throughout my life and always have this fantasy that someone's looking for me. And if I have something in my new name that's of my old name, they could find me.
Find you. Yeah.
That's just a humorous, not truth really. But so Diana Dugan Richards is my email at gmail.com. So I kind of always display that. I'm in Watertown, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston, and love it. Love it here. I'm originally from the South, many years in the South, and love what I brought with me, but am very happy to be here. A lot more freedom here for me. Just
What's
a lot.
the weather like where you are now? Sorry to interrupt.
Today, this morning, it was in the low 20s with a wind chill of 14, but we're experiencing that really big storm that came through, but we just got rain.
Okay. I'll have to know what's going on outside everyone's windows.
Well, also it's always sunny in San Diego. So.
Yeah. I need some variation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you from in the South originally?
I was born in Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
And have lived there, have lived in Germany. From there, came back to Alabama. Lived in Prattville, Alabama for several years, lived in Dover, Delaware, lived in South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
My gosh.
And then came, So that's the fun fact. If you want a fun fact about me, I think I've lived in, I can't remember, 43 or 48 moves.
Wow.
Whoa.
In my life. Yeah.
Wow. Were you a military child?
I was.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I was to start with. And then I married into a frequent traveler.
Yeah.
Frequent
flyer.
That was, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Been all around. I love it. And it sounds like you love where you are now. You've settled in there and that's something about being there that brings you some peace or joy or something about it.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's getting less 4 seasons, but we do definitely have winter, spring, summer, fall.
Yeah.
I moved from a very busy street that I lived on for 14 years to this home, which I've been in for almost 5. And it's 2 streets behind that place that I lived, but it's completely quiet.
Wow.
It's completely quiet, and my nervous system is happier. Living in the quiet. Massachusetts is beautiful. New England is beautiful. Yeah. Lots to do and see here, mountains or oceans or lakes.
Yeah. I do love New England. I think last year I was there 8 times. Every travel that I took, aside from going to see Grace once, was to New England.
Couldn't stop.
I could not stop. We have family in Rhode Island, and so we were there a lot. And then in Boston,
Beverly.
and to Beverly, which is actually, we should say how we know Diana.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah. So Diana, great, as previously mentioned on the podcast, Grace and I did our level 1 IFS training together in good old Beverly, Massachusetts, and
Wiley Center.
and Diana was one of our PAs, our program assistants, and so
Diana was on staff.
Yeah, so we got to work with her and know her and learn so much then. And whenever we were kind of putting together who we might want to come on and who we even had connections to,
yeah,
you were one of those people because you left such an imprint on us. And so, yeah, so that is how we know Diana, for those who may or may not have been curious.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say that you made an impression on me as well, because I think we were diagonally across the big circle for most of our 2 weeks. And from the moment I noticed you, I thought they have been BFFs since before kindergarten. And when I asked you, it was like, no, we just met, but it was like you were old souls that had found each other again.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful to see that.
Aww. That makes me a little bit emotional.
Literally me too. Oh gosh.
Yeah,
I know I could Grace started
ahead. tearing up. I always wonder how it was perceived. I'm like, how annoying would it have been to see how chatty we were and giggly we were? And also it's really nice to hear that the connection was obvious, and yeah, it just was like moth to a flame.
You know, I just read in I love whenever one of my fun little books gives me something that feels scientific, because I'm like, aha, I am learning, even I have no idea if it's real, but it said that there's some like evidence suggesting that people that we become best friends with are actually, there's some like DNA connection. And so like almost like they could be your fourth cousin if you're besties.
Love that.
And I'm like, I don't know how true that is, but I'm gonna take that of like the reason that you find this like soulmate level connection is maybe there's something in your DNA.
Oh, I'll take it. I love it.
We're cousins. We're play cousins
from across the ocean. Well, good. And so, go ahead, Diana.
I was going to add that soulmates are souls that have traveled together. So it could be, there may not be a DNA connection, but I like the idea. But it could also be that you've traveled together before and you find yourself finding each other in this lifetime.
I can see
and I do believe it.
Yeah.
It's like invisible strings, as the great philosopher Taylor Swift says.
Natalie's a Swiftie.
Back to Diana.
Great. So that's how we met you. So part of what you do, Diana, is you live in this IFS world with us, and you are, a practitioner of the model, but you also support the Institute by being a staff member. And would you want to share a little bit about some of the roles that you've picked up through time and how you've shown up in that space?
Absolutely. A little bit of why I even am in this model is that as a dietitian, I felt the calling to go to a yoga teacher training. So I did training. It was a year-long training in Anyasara yoga, which has the tenets of look for the good, with a deep belief that we are divine manifestations, that we hold the divine within ourselves, that we are innately good and inherently beautiful. So I'm teaching this year after year after year, really embodying it. And I'm sure we'll come back to that at some other point. And I learned about IFS, and it felt energetically stimulating to me to hear this presentation of a model that felt like the language to what I could ascribe to how I'm trying to teach the yoga concepts in a nutrition session without sounding like a Yahoo or something, like, so anyway, so I found out it was really near here, and I did a level 1, immediately did a level 2. I did wait a while to do my level 3, and that's a separate string, only because my Anyasara guru dabbled in places that he shouldn't and took a fall from Grace and from the community, and they sent him on his way. And so there was a dubious part in me about this leader of IFS. And so I was wary. I had wary parts and I wanted to kind of watch, but eventually I thought, okay, he seems tame. He seems like he's in it to win it. He's a real person. So then I did the level 3 with Dick. I have participated in both the IFIO advanced and the beginner models, invited to Shame Camp and then advanced Shame Camp with Tony Herbine Blank. And that was wonderful. Jory Agate organized all of those. And then I found Molly Kellogg at an IFS conference one day. And I know her as a dietitian. And I was thinking, why is she at an IFS conference? Is she a dietitian who is learning IFS? So we decided to work together and we introduce IFS to nutrition professionals who don't have another way to learn about it. So that's ongoing. And then I started PAing. I thought the best way for my system to learn is to teach. And so I started PAing selfishly for me. And I've done, I don't know, more than a handful of each, the level 1s, the level 2s. I've spent some time with Dick and Sarah Stewart at Kripalu, which is in Western Mass, the sort of immersive retreats at that yoga and meditation center out there. So that's kind of what I do. And now I'm in private practice on Zoom since the pandemic, and I haven't gone back to an office.
Yeah. Amazing.
Wow.
Big wow. Like what?
Yeah.
Like, wow. Like so much experience, so much learned, like so many. I'm just thinking of how impactful, how much I hold from our level 1. And that was just one training. I'm just imagining like how much your system has experienced through all of those, wonderful experiences. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like every level 1 I PA, I learned something. And I'm thinking, where was I in mine or in the others that I PA'd? And then I'm hoping it was just new information being brought in. But I learn every time. And I view my clients as my teachers. And I so also view the participants in a level 1 as teachers for me.
Yeah.
You know, what am I seeing? What am I not seeing? What do I know? What do I not know?
Yeah.
I feel the need to explain what a PA is for people who may not know.
Sure.
So at a training, and Diana, you can probably do this better than I could, but at a training, there are the lead trainers, and usually I think there's 2 of them, and then there's an assistant trainer who also whatever they teach too. And anyway, and then there are program assistants or PAs, and they are kind of, in my experience, there to help not only teach, but also like help you really embody and learn the model. And so as you go off and do like practicing the model, a PA is always with you in usually groups of 3. And so you get to kind of learn the model in a very personal way, in a very practiced way. But from people like Diana, who have just had their own experiences with IFS and who've already learn so much and embody it so much in their own practice, that they really have so much to offer. And for me, that was one of the, I learn most by like visualization and also by doing. And so that was one of the most helpful pieces, which I'm sure a lot of people do, which is why they set up the training like they do. And so, yeah, and I think it's really lovely that they try to choose PAs and make it a very diverse group, in kind of all the ways. And also in the type of work all the PAs do seems very different. And so I really think they try to have a very like diverse and also balanced and well-rounded group of people who can offer all these different perspectives based on their life experiences and their work. And so just wanted to explain that for people who might be like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, I feel like PAs hold our system as we're learning. That's really what it feels like for me, is like you get to help us navigate what's going on inside of us as we're trying to learn all of this beautiful work. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's the participant that holds or is playing the role of therapist is really the client for the program assistant, is to help what's getting in the way of you being fully present for the client, what's getting in the way of you listening for parts, reflecting that back and what's holding you back from being your best in that seat.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you've got to, I was terrified to be anything but observer in my
Yeah.
level one. So the triads have somebody playing the therapist, somebody playing the client, which is usually real stuff, and then someone who's observing their own parts that rise up in that session. And I always wanted to be I was successful. I was always the observer on the first day of the 3-day weekend. It just felt safer,
Yeah.
being a
Yeah.
dietitian in a room full of therapists.
Yeah.
Like everybody was a therapist except for one other person
Mm-hmm.
between the staff and the participants. So it just felt safer to me to be in that role of quiet, watching, observing,
Yeah.
and then to step into the seat of the therapist.
Yeah. That's so interesting. My parts were always they wanted to be a therapist first, so I could just be like, let's go, I'm ready to practice. And then like I need to do it before I like lose my edge, before I lose the information that I just learned or like that. And I also just what you said about working with the person in the therapist role to see what parts are getting in their way. I did not expect that at all going into. I didn't know that was a part of training. And so actually when that happened, I had parts that got so frustrated that I couldn't just practice the model. And I was like, what? Like you're getting in the way. And then slowly now I'm like, that is the most helpful part of it.
Yeah.
Because even now, Grace and I do consultation, like IFS consultation with someone, and also not what I expected from our consultation. Like I expected the practical, like how you might in other models of like practically how you need to use the model and what you could try with your clients. And what comes up more often that I find is not more helpful, but just very helpful is working with our own systems. And usually that lends to so much more of a like quote unquote breakthrough, if you will. And so that was like so helpful in the training and a component I just did not expect at all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the main things I share with folks who are curious about the model and want to do training. I'm like, yeah, you just have to be prepared that this is all about you. This is all really about you and your parts.
That's
So
right.
just kind of
That's
buckle
right.
up a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. And Diana, you do consultation as well.
I do consultation as well. I just started my third group. So
Yay.
I have what I call an IFS informed group. We have 6 participants who I am so enthralled with this group because they are wildly knowledgeable about the model. Just
Cool.
and so beautiful when they bring their cases, they bring their own parts.
Mm.
Then I have an IFS level 1 trained group, and then I opened one that's just my third group, and it's kind of open to anybody who wants to be there, and it's been really good. And I do some one-on-one consulting with folks, depending on what their needs are. And it's like I'm learning by teaching. I'm learning by listening to what they're stumbling into and what their stuck points are. And then I get to filter through my index in my brain or my intuitive quality. I'm I'm taking a class right now and it's called spiritual mentorship, and it's designed to help me see my intuitive qualities, to know how they present to me, to deepen them, and to trust them. And it's been an amazing experience, especially in either whether it's a one-on-one with a client or in a consultation. This idea that something comes to me and I don't just discard it anymore as, oh, that's the part of me trying to find a solution, or that's a part of me trying to change the course of where we're going. I really lean into it now, and it's been really a special, very special part now. It's transforming how I am with my clients for sure.
Awesome. How did you find
And I
that?
don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
How did I find it?
No, yeah, like how did you like find that class? Like what kind of took you there?
What took me there is meeting the woman who was running the class, and is a she's a therapist, and she's also involved in, I hate to use the word mediumship, but in a way it's kind of mediumship. And so I was learning from her just on a one-on-one basis, just what, as far as like soul travel and, where my soul is, what my soul needs, and what my learnings are and what the edges are and what the growth is. So I knew of her through that, and she developed this in the early part of the pandemic, but didn't offer it until the end. So it's just been really magnificent for me to the experiences with my clients has shifted, and they can tell.
Yeah. So cool. I
Mm.
feel like there's just so much to learn. Like every training I go to or every, you know, person I encounter in this world, like this IFS world, I just feel like there's so much growing to do, so much learning to do. There's so many different ways to expand. And it's kind of the exciting piece of it. I feel like, you know, throughout this hopefully decades long careers that we're going to have, it's going to just keep on, we're just going to keep on growing and expanding and finding different ways to sit with clients. And this just feels like it's never ending.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I definitely hear this like lifelong learner part that you have, Diana.
Yeah.
And I love it because I don't feel like I have that part, or it's like dormant anyway. And
Correct.
so, but I really love hearing about all the ways that you and I can really hear the like passion and sincerity in the learning that you're doing, and it being not only for you but also for the like benefit and betterment of like your work and your work with clients. And um I think that is really special, and that I can imagine lends itself really beautifully to the work you're doing. And it makes perfect sense to me that your clients are like, I can tell something is different. Like I can tell you're
Mhm.
offering something different. And I think as a clinician, that would be, I don't know if we've talked about this before on the podcast, but it's not really the space that you're going to get a lot of positive feedback from people of like, here's how you've helped me and thank you so much. Like that
Mhm.
might happen from time to time, and that's not really the point, so that's okay. But I think anytime that you're able to get that feedback from the people that you're directly working with, it's so valuable, and it can feel so impactful. Or at least, yeah, for me and my parts, it feels like, wow, okay, like I know I can see their work and their progress and how, I'm helping how I want to be helpful. But have them see that, not just making it about me, how I'm helpful, but to have them see like I got here because of this work we're doing,
Yeah.
um, is really meaningful. So I'm glad that you're getting some of that. And yeah.
Well, I think it's really from my perspective, doing what I do, because as a dietitian, we are taught a lot of didactic ways of being with clients. And when you shift that over into holding a therapeutic presence with someone, teaching isn't necessarily what they need. If they're coming to me with body concerns or food choice concerns, it's not, yeah, sometimes they say just tell me what to eat, but largely it's not that. It's being with, it's holding space and presence for the parts of them that are needing to be seen, and to embrace their wonderfulness, to embrace their positive intentions, the dedication they have to their roles, exploring their fears, listening intently, and ultimately holding a space where healing can happen. Sometimes it's spontaneous, sometimes it's guided.
Mm.
What clients do share with me, so to your point, Natalie, we don't often get accolades, but a client will often say to me at the end of a session, new clients particularly, I feel really safe here. I can't believe I'm saying the things that I'm saying to you. I can't, it's embarrassing for me to say these things, but I'm saying them. They share, a part's behavior that's troubling to them. And I really deeply appreciate that they can feel the space that's created for them to let their parts speak through them, because that's why they're there, and if they can't share, then they're not going to be able to get the healing that they're coming for. So
Mm-hmm.
if I find other ways of tapping into what I'm hearing, and if I, because a lot of us do use our intuition, we use our own experiences. We may not word it that way, but if someone says they're having a certain symptom with a certain medication and I have experience of that, or other clients have had experience, then there's a wisdom, there's a knowing in that, and we can explore that. What is that like for you to have that feeling in your body when that happens?
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels like, um, this space that's held really like it's the model, which is all parts are welcome and like truly and genuinely, as opposed to, hey, you got to be truthful if you want things to change. It's more of like, they're all here, that they can come, there's no judgment, we can get to know them, all the things that we kind of learn in the model. But it feels like you don't even have to say that, Diana, and the clients know that to be true when they're in a space with you. Yeah.
I've really come to realize since day one with this, as I was listening to this presentation on IFS, and then I learned it, that dietitians are taught to stay in their lane, to be mindful of scope of practice. So in a chapter I wrote for the book Freeing Self, taking, how we take IFS into non-therapeutic ways out into the world. It was that's one of the biggest things that I was thinking about in that chapter. It's like scope of practice. And in my level 1, taking the seat of the therapist, I always had that little part back here going, wait a minute, you can't take the seat of the therapist. So there was a lot of internal work that I did, and a lot of just sort of some badass parts too, that said, you know what, this is trailblazing. And so let's just go with it.
Oh yeah.
So I find that IFS is just the key in my work and how I work with people. I can't imagine any other way.
Yeah. And that makes me really curious, actually, and you've kind of maybe alluded to some of this already, but I'm curious, like, what parts you see most in your clients, because you've mentioned a lot of the work you do almost like in the IFS community, and some of the ways that you bring it to like with nutrition and nutrition and dietitian, those two words mixed up.
Nutrition.
Anyway,
That's right.
nutrition,
That's right.
you all know what I mean. But I am so curious, as you do that work, like how IFS lends itself into that world, and like you're saying, and Grace and I have the similar of like stay in your scope of practice kind of, and I think that's an ethical way to be, and I think that scope can look different for everyone, and it can hopefully expands as you learn more and grow. And so I am really curious just what IFS looks like in the dietitian world, and what parts you see most in your clients. And yeah,
I really like both of those questions a lot, and it's hard to explain the idea of a dietitian taking IFS out into the world. And I have several dietitians in my consultation groups, and past groups as well. And what I've noticed is that we are taught in such a very specific way. It's a very competitive educational internship process, like many, especially medical education processes are very difficult and very challenging and very competitive. So we have to unlearn that a little bit, and to take the therapeutic role, to soften into ourselves a little bit, and to get our science mind out of the way and our solutions and didactic kind of parts to the side. But partly as a dietitian, what this lets me do with clients that are struggling is IFS allows for and encourages relationship and connection, and something I just heard called loving relatedness. And it's an awareness of the etiology of the feelings and the emotions and the impulses in someone's system without shaming the system or the parts. For me, it reduces the amount of separateness, that we're less than, or sometimes that we're better than, we're superior or inferior to other parts or to other people. We have comparing parts, and the barrier can be removed, or at least softened, with loving tenderness toward these parts that are really, really hurting. And it's important to me that my clients' parts hear me align with them in a tender way, not align with them, but understand them, validate them. Of course, you're going to turn to food. That's what was available. It's what got you through. Of course, you're going to do that, and really spend time in that way. Because what I find is if we think about the deeper, most tender, most vulnerable parts inside of most of us, especially, well, not even especially with food and body, just in general, it's often not enough.
Mm.
You know, if we follow the protective system down into the deepest parts of them where all of these exiles live, it's I'm not good enough, smart enough, thin enough, pretty enough, lovable,
Yeah.
adequate, I'm unworthy. There's insecurity, there's a high level of neediness per them, fear of abandonment. And then there's also on the other side, too much. I always heard I'm too sensitive.
Mm.
I'm too big of a personality. I'm too needy. And then there's all this shame around that, that then leads, of course, to the protectors who want to take over.
Yeah.
The protective system is really strong. And I've done several touch-ins with C. Sykes and Mary Kruger as well on their compassion for the addictive process. And I think it's superior to anything else around food and body, which can be viewed as an addictive process. I personally don't have a belief that food is addictive. I don't disagree with clients who have parts who do, but we explore that. Like, what does that mean to them? You know, and I don't need to come in with my science head and my biology and my physiology and all that kind of stuff. But what does it feel like to you to say that word and just sit with them?
Yeah, I'm just soaking it all in. I'm
Yeah.
soaking it all in. I'm already learning so much. Natalie, what's coming up for
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
One thing that I really love that you said or embodied, I don't know, however it came across, but is the like easy and open, maybe not easy, but like the open willingness for you to set aside your own parts and like even in what you just said about you may not share that belief or that framework about food being addictive, and if it feels,
Right.
if your clients do, like I love that you were like, I'm setting aside all of me and I'm just gonna let you be curious about that. And
That's
I
right.
think, a lot of us can have so many parts that, especially, coming from a clinical role, that's like,
Yeah.
no, let me give you the science behind it. And so I
Yeah.
really
Right.
love even the invitation from you, Diana, and I can imagine how that feels for your clients to just say like, okay, tell me about that,
Mm.
instead of to jump into psychoeducation or like
Right.
science and to try and then to say, let me tell you about it. And so I'm imagining, obviously, or not let me tell you, but tell me. And so I'm imagining, obviously, when it's necessary or helpful, you have information and resources to share that might be a bit more scientific. But I love that basically what I'm hearing is that there is no agenda. Like all of that takes a back seat to what the client is feeling and experiencing. And I think that is really like leads to really momentous and powerful work. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I just really love hearing that.
I think it has to. And so a lot of times I explain it this way. As dietitians, we are taught certain things that as absolute because there's research behind it. And what I've noticed as I've worked in the field for a long time is that there's almost always an equal amount of research for as there is against.
Mm.
So I can say, yes, this is what the research says on this hand, but on this hand it's saying this. Because I believe that each client of mine needs to be an informed consumer. They need to know both sides. Because as C says, the ninth C is choice.
Mm.
And it's really important to me that they know they have choice and that their choice is their choice and there's nothing wrong or immoral or illegal or bad about it. It's their choice. But do we all understand what certain foods do for our bodies and what other foods do for our bodies? And is there a delineation between them? I try really hard to remove the binary from food so that there's not good or bad or should or shouldn't, harmful, not harmful. And so it's just, yes. And so I have to ask my parts to unblend because working at, I don't want to name the hospital itself, but I was the manager of a weight management center of a medical academic hospital, a pretty big one here in the Boston area. And so for over 8 years, I was all diet culture.
Mm.
That's all we did was try to find the thin person in a fat body
Yeah.
and let them escape and be who they really are meant to be, which over time ate at me so really, really vigorously, just ate at me until I finally, thankfully, I my partner could support us and I could leave and start teaching more yoga. And I said, I just need a little break from nutrition for a little bit. And then when I did dive back into it in private practice, it was like I was sowing seeds in a field of opportunity. I was just like, I'll do anything. I'll do home visits. I'll talk about GI health. We can talk about vegetarian nutrition. We can talk about the benefits of whole fat milk, whatever you want. I'll just do whatever you want. And it eventually, all that went into the funnel and it came out in a very clear, no, this is what you need to be doing. And so let go of that. The GI stuff still had research behind it and against it.
Mm.
Right. So it was still, so I started thinking, is this parts that are at play? Like what parts are at play in someone who wants to eliminate all these foods
Yeah.
from their diet? So then I had to learn more about, you know, weight inclusive approaches, weight neutral, anti diet. And so I swung from that diet culture, that end of the spectrum, I swung all the way to the other side.
Yeah.
And then my clients were showing up, having done really deep, long term, therapeutically healing work with their parts and said, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready now to lose weight. And I'm like, uh, um, well, huh.
Yeah.
So I'm like way over here, like, no, no, you know. So then I realized that that's still me bringing an agenda.
Mm.
So I had to sit, I had a U-turn, right? I had to U-turn into
Yeah.
me and say, I'm not the one that gets to say yay or nay. I'm not the one that gets to approve or disapprove. That's not me. That's their choice. And can we discuss consequences? Can we talk about the effects of? Can we talk about parts that will come up as your body changes? And so luckily, I'm most of the time tap dancing in the middle space of the two ends of the spectrum around that, but mostly just unblending my own dang parts
Yeah.
and listening and making space for the parts of them coming forward. And can they meet you? Can they meet you so that they have a hand to hold and they don't have to do this all by themselves?
Yeah. Inside connection with
Yeah.
self. I'm
Yeah.
curious as you're sharing this, Diana, I'm having a curiosity. This is I'm going to ask this as if it's a simple question, and I know it's not, but I'm curious what your theories or what you've learned over the years, what protectors, we talk about diet culture a lot. Like, what do you think those protectors are? Like, what, those of us or the industry or a culture that's so obsessed with thin bodies and health, quote unquote, what do you think that's about? What are those protectors about, do you think?
Oh gosh,
I know, big
as
question.
I'm again to find myself in the middle again is, doing some what is Jory Agate led us through in a peer group, the intercultural developmental inventory, I think, where we get to sit with ourselves and take a test and do the Harvard implicit bias test and all of these things to find out where our system is sitting in the middle of these ideas.
Yeah.
Dick says that you cannot live in this country, but I even say the world, without having a racist part because it's cultural. And we
Right.
can't live in this country, really in the world, without having some type of internalized weight bias or weight stigma because it's been so apparently thrown at us. We were born into this life with that understanding, and it came out through our parents and our grandparents and our teachers and our pastors. Like it just, diet culture is just everywhere, and it has a rich and not so pleasant beginning. But where do we start to make impact so that it can stop and that we can be okay? So most of the protectors, not most, but a lot of protectors that I meet are the ones that don't feel they are worthy in their body,
Yeah.
right? Their body isn't small enough or fit enough. If it's a smaller body, I'm not fit enough. I need to be buff.
Mm.
You know, that the comparing parts to other people.
Yeah.
The protectors that don't believe that body diversity is a natural and real and a thing to be celebrated.
Right.
That we've had body diversity for eons.
Mm.
And can we slow down around that and not make bodies bad because of their size or shape or color or hair length or whatever? You know, that we can come to a place. So we have internal critics that have picked up these messages really strongly and stored them deeply inside. And usually it's the little ones that are holding some of these beliefs too. And then the protective system acts to keep that down so we don't feel that. There's perfectionistic parts that come up. There's actually lack of trust, like there's a group called the Center for Body Trust because they're like, you can trust your body, but nobody believes they can.
Yeah.
Like my GI clients would come in and and you know what I'm talking about, the gut.
Yeah.
I can't say that right now. They come in and they're like they're not believing what their body's telling you. And I said, well, when you ate that substance, your body got a stomach ache or you had diarrhea. It's telling you something. So what if there's just a gentle shift around that? It doesn't mean you eliminate everything that's gluten. Gluten's not bad for you. Dairy's not bad for you. You know, we've been told it is, but it really isn't. Some people can't tolerate it. Then we'll go with that, right? We'll see. But your body's telling you something. Can you listen in a less extreme way? These,
Yeah.
you know, parts are all or none, like you said. They're parentified parts too that come in and that end up having to be in control because they've always been in control. There are striving parts. There are self-loathing parts. There are parts that tell us we're disgusting. There are parts that tell us our value and worth is dependent on being a certain ideal that has literally just been draped on us without our permission.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
And then
I'm
we
one.
have insistent parts too, like the ones that I'm going to eat this, you know, I'm going to say the F it parts, you know, I'm going to eat this no matter what. And you can't tell me I can't. Or the parts that say, oh my gosh, I did eat all those things. And so now I need to go run for 5 hours. You know, so we have these really extreme parts in both directions.
This is like all so rich. And like you said a minute ago, Grace, I'm just taking it in and I feel so like I have this part that's like, yes, 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 yes. It's
Yeah.
like so
Everyone needs a
aligned on
Diana.
board. Yeah,
Everyone
right.
needs
And
one.
I'm like, and actually, not that I think what comes like a curiosity that comes up for me is almost wanting you to or almost wanting to hear, like, I know the answer to this, but I just sort of want, like, maybe for other people who might be wondering, why is it so important? Everything you're saying to use IFS, like to use this framework, like the all inclusive, the curiosity, the like everything is welcome. There are no bad parts. We'll meet you where you are. Like that entire framework, especially in like the dietitian world and in with the clients you see, like I guess like why is it so important? And also like what's the danger or I don't know if you'd call it danger, but I might of like what's the danger of if you don't approach it this way? Because a lot of people don't. And I think about in Memphis, I think there might only be one, at least that I know of, one clinic of a team of dietitians that are all eating disorder or disordered eating informed and like trauma informed. One. And so I'm wondering, like, maybe you could speak to like what are the consequences of not having this um like framework going into this work.
I love that question.
Not having IFS, you mean?
I would say maybe not having IFS or maybe not having I don't know how to explain it. Maybe like the place that IFS has brought you to and how you approach bodies and food and the work you do with people in their bodies and with food, with
Mhm.
so much I don't know, Grace, can you help
Yeah,
me
like
like
not
finish
like
this?
getting to a place where you're able to not punish parts or put restriction on people or have judgment around how parts show up, or yeah, just like this really like inclusive, open way of dealing with folks that are having, food. I don't know if that feels right, Natalie, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say what I'm thinking you want, and then
Okay.
you'll ask for
Okay.
clarification. I think back on my clients who have been teachers for me, and I have a long-term client who has lived in pain her whole life, and
Mm,
she has never, no one has ever been able to tell her why.
Mm,
And most people just tell her it's like, I think it's somatic, it's psychosomatic, right? You're not
mm,
really in pain, which is a very painful thing to hear from a
yeah.
mhm.
provider. Like, I'm not believing you.
Yeah.
And so I worked very diligently to find providers that she could lean into and trust. And after years of her whole life, she finally found a diagnosis that completely explained her pain and her body failing, and her weight had nothing to do with it.
Mm,
Because she kept saying, I know, Diana, you're saying that my weight is not causing all this, but I just can't seem to. I just believe that if I lost weight, then my knees wouldn't hurt and then my
yeah.
ankles wouldn't pop out of, this kind of thing. And I'm like, well, there may be some truth to that. Right. There may be some truth to that, but it's not the final answer and it's not the originating truth. The truth is you have a condition that you didn't ask for, but you're having to learn how to live with. And how can you do that, which is with as much grace and self-love as you can? And so for me, it's focusing on the whole person. Another client that put off GYN care because her body was large enough that she felt like it couldn't be dealt with in the traditional ways of dealing with the body.
Mm,
And so working with the parts that were afraid to make that appointment and say, can we find a provider who will understand you? And so we work hard to find these providers, these clinicians that can have an open heart, that can be weight inclusive, that can be creative. And can we find ways to work together? So, we can't take these bodies out of the equation. These bodies are all bodies. The bodies are the bodies, and we can't take them out. We have to work with what we have. We have to recognize them as they are. So for me, using the model of IFS means we focus on the whole person. We focus on their physical body. We focus on their symptomology. We do assessments. As a dietitian, I can do some assessments. I'm not completely clinical, never have been, didn't never want to be, but I can ask some questions and say, maybe would you see your primary? Would you see, would you be open to a different GYN? So I want to listen to their parts. I want to hear their concerns and fears, their desires, their wants. I want to delve into their well-being. What does it take for you to feel at your best, to feel optimal, to feel vibrant, to feel like you are owning this life that you've been given?
mm,
And if there are any behavioral changes that you could even think of that could get you closer to that goal of your vibrancy, then are you open to an experiment with it and just see, can we check in with your parts? And can we get some, can we negotiate with them to say, this is an experiment. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
mm.
I love
Is
that
that
word
helpful at all?
vibrancy. Did you get your answer,
Yeah,
Natalie?
I think maybe have a part that wants to very explicitly say, like, and if you don't do it this way, then
Right.
like the opposite of what you're saying
Got
will
it.
happen. Like you're missing them. You're missing the person. Like there's a danger of um or like a really negative consequence of them going on being missed. And then that goes back to all of the parts you mentioned earlier of like,
Mm,
I can't take up space, or I'm too much, or I'm not enough, or
Mm-hmm,
any
mm-hmm,
any variation of that. And then these
mm-hmm.
parts, they never get the relief. They never get to be seen and heard and known and burdened and relieved in the sense of like doing these duties and lacking the behavior change. And so I don't know, I think I just had a part that really wanted to point out like the importance of doing this work in the way you're talking about it, because the opposite of that is harmful, actually,
The
in my
opposite
opinion.
is harmful. It is
Yeah.
harmful. And what happens is treatment centers, let's just say eating disorder treatment center focuses on managerial approaches to get rid of the eating disorder.
Yeah.
Well, our very first tenet is all parts are welcome. So
Mm-hmm.
why are we going to get rid of our eating disorder part? What if instead we could face it and have it face us? And let's create relationship. Let's create a loving presence for it to feel it can be there and that it's okay, that it's not, because everybody says that's the bad thing. Nobody likes the parts that firefight, that overeat, over exercise, over drink, over gamble, whatever the addictive process is for that person. The other thing that I do like with the client I mentioned about, I don't know if I mentioned it so far, but clients that use food for soothing or for distracting or for numbing, let's just get to know them because, food can soothe and food can distract us for a little bit. When you're studying late at night, you're going to eat because it keeps you awake. So you can keep studying the hard stuff. So what if they did have a role for us? And what if we could accept that role and we could appreciate them for what they're trying to do? And then maybe we shift how we study. So there's more to well-being than just going that way. There might be a different way to approach this that the eating parts didn't have to work so hard. I'm not invalidating them, but I'm just saying, do they like what they do? Or what's their intention for you? Are they achieving that intention? Are you calm and cool and collected? Right. And if not, how can we help them? So I do want to name every part of the system and the value that it brings to the system, because I know that it's got a deeper belief. It's told itself a story that has meaning to it, usually about how it was bad in some way. And now it can't be seen anymore. That forms these different protective parts.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I hear in that is my brain literally just went blank. Hold on, wait. This is making so much sense. And then okay. Well, Grace,
You want to let it come back?
wow. I do. I really want it to come back. So I have to try to let it go.
Yeah. Okay. One question that I was having, Diana, is what might you say to, or how would you work with a client who, because what I'm hearing is the approach of like, let's face it, let's let it in. These parts that you try so hard to push away and hide, like, why don't we invite them in, come face to face? The clients who are really afraid of what might happen if you do that, how do you usually kind of share or work with those parts that are so afraid of these?
Can I say really quickly, because this will go kind of hand in hand with that. What I remembered was it sounds like the piece that is the shift here is before you go to behavior change, like, okay, can we change how you study? You really, really lean into, let's just be with this part. Let's just get to know it. Like, this is the IFS piece that I'm hearing that is so valuable. And like, that's the missing component to a lot of the work that other practitioners or clinicians might do. And so I really wanted to highlight, like, it's not that the behavior change isn't necessary, because it can be. And we all know this and have experienced this, I'm sure, but the behavior change won't mean anything if we're not with that part first, because it will keep coming up. And so that kind of lends itself, like, I just wanted to name, like, that's the component before, is like, we have to sit with it before we try to change it. And then we don't even try to change it, actually, like, anyway. And so wanted to name that before you answered Grace's questions, kind of goes in with it.
Well, it often doesn't need to keep doing what it's doing sometimes. And so, like, an example of a client of mine who, the same one I've been speaking about, she showed up at my office one day and said, I went to CVS next door and I got a really big bag of chocolate because I've got a medical appointment and I'm really nervous about what's going to happen. And I said, so let's talk about who bought that chocolate. Like, who took you into the CVS? And so we got a chance to sit with that part that was really afraid that these diagnoses were going to be sort of undermining her own ability to take care of herself, or would her biggest fear was developing diabetes like her mom had, because she was parentified with her mom around diabetes, and she saw that food fixed things. It did it in her mom. Every time her mom was nearly going into, sort of the coma state of really low blood pressure, dad would come in and feed her. And so that was the message that was here. So if the news is bad, I know I can just eat this chocolate and things are going to be better. So we were able to meet it, say, hi, why are you doing this? What are you afraid would happen if you didn't? And so we got to a place. And so I said, just check in with me after the appointment, send me a quick text or something or an email. And she texted me and she said, the appointment wasn't super fun, but when I got back to the car, I didn't need to eat the chocolate because I knew, I was holding the hand of this little part.
Yeah.
It's not that what the part was doing was bad, but it was doing it for a reason that it didn't need to do it anymore, right? Like this client has the capacity now and can sit with these hard things. And this little just didn't have to keep doing that. So I think that speaks to what you're saying. That's why, to me, sitting with the parts is so important, because we get to hear why. And then client and self can go, oh my goodness. Oh, like you're 6. No, no, right? And can really help them and get them to a safe space so that then they get to make the decision versus it being parts driven.
Yes.
So Grace, you'll remind me of what your question
Well,
was.
I think you're almost answering it in a way. Is like what I'm hearing is, when we can invite the parts in, they're holding a lot of like wisdom. They, instead of just saying, hey, go away, go away, go away, go away, we, open the conversation and they can say, well, I'm trying to have you not feel so stressed, or I'm trying to keep, whatever it is. And then they kind of maybe find another way to be. They're there with self. They soften naturally, or they find ways to soften and give, self or the client more room. My question was, what might you say to a client who is having a lot of fear of inviting these parts in? And it sounds like, part of what happens is when you invite them in, they soften.
Well, and that's a very real thing, especially in the way I work with clients, that when parts come up, I do address fears. I'm almost go to fears before anything.
Right.
Just to see, well, it's afraid that I can't handle what it's going to tell me, or it's afraid that there will be overwhelm, or it's afraid that it will be kicked out. Right. Or changed. And so those are those I can work with. Let it know that I know how to help it not overwhelm you. I know how to help you be with it so it doesn't have to. Right.
Yeah.
And if it's news that you didn't know about, together we can let it know that you've got capacity to field that now, and that we'll be with it tenderly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so once parts hear that the client has capacity and has resources available to it, a lot of times it's saying, does it know that I'm here? Does it know that you have a therapist? Does it know that you're here? Most importantly, but if it needs the team to be expanded, show it. Have it look at me through your eyes. And so it notices that I'm here also, and I'm holding a lot of tenderness toward it,
Yeah.
a lot of warmth toward it.
Yeah. It's not only its job. There's so much. Yeah. So many other resources it can rely on. The system can rely on.
Yeah. Diana, this is
100.
so, like, selfishly, this is so helpful. I
I
feel like
know,
I'm
I love it.
like just getting so much out of this, and having parts that are being reminded of, like, oh, yes, when you had a client that said this or said something similar to something that you've named, and I, like, it was a part that stepped in and tried to help, that had an agenda that was like, we can do this and we can help them. And so even hearing you say this, I think I've said this in a different way a few times, but I just am so, like, your self is so clearly coming through. And I think that's, I can just tell how that clearly comes through with your with your clients, and why your work is so impactful, because I can tell that like it is self-led. It's not, and you have so much awareness of where your parts are, and like what parts might be trying to like interrupt. And I know it's, a lot of it's come with time and practice and experience, but also it sounds like so much work that you've done within your own system. and in training you've done and in getting to like witness other people and in continuously growing. Like I just hear so much of yourself that keeps coming through. And I'm like, yes, this is what's different. This is the game changer of like not the behavior management and not the like focusing on, let me tell you what to eat and let me give you all of the resources and all the
Yeah.
psychoeducation and all the research. Like it is just you that comes through. And I think that is one of the most beautiful healing parts of IFS is that like when you really can let the self lead, healing will come. And even when you said like your clients leave and they say, I just feel so safe here. And like that doesn't happen with everyone. And honestly, I think it doesn't happen unless self is there. And not even I think I know. And so so I just really like I'm just that is sort of there's so many takeaways. And that is one of the ones that just keeps coming up for me. It's like I'm just hearing so much of your like capital S self for those who, you know, might be newer to the model. And that is the like that's the healing agent, if you will.
It's taken time though. I started this in 2011, and even through all of that, there was so much learning and growing that I needed to do for myself. You know, even recently I was sitting with someone who we're thinking of working together, and we had our first session, and we got together the second time. I always say I'm completely open for feedback, you know, because I do want to know. I'm human too, and I do have parts, and sometimes those parts pop out, even though I don't mean for them to. And she said that she didn't say it, she said it in a very lovely way, that she was worried that she thought I classified 12-step programs as management and therefore not good. And I said, well, you know, yes, I may have said something similar to that. I may have said that a 12-step program attunes to the managers in our system because it is a manager driven. It's here are the rules, here are the steps, here are where we go from point 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And we follow the yellow brick road in a way because our system is so despondent or in despair or feels so broken it will never get whole. And this is something for our parts to latch onto that feel like a rope that's pulling us out of something, that it is managerial. And that my intention is to be with even parts that want to do 12-step programs. Let's see why. What are they hoping to gain from that? Could it partner along with your internal parts work? So, I mean, she seemed to be okay with the answer. I think she was thinking I was against it, which I'm not at all. I think it has its place. And it's like Jean Catanzaro and I in 2019, we did the continuity program, and that was part and parcel of the message is that external programs are not inherently bad. They don't serve a system that is at unrest or is highly critical. I mean, it can work. Like you have really bad, one of my clients had intense critics that got her into a 12-step program. And she benefited from now the ideal of what bodies are supposed to look like. But in the process, she was harmed in ways that we're now working to help her parts let go of what her system says. I need the rigidity. I need to be told what to eat. I need to be told how to move my body. So we're working together for her parts to start trusting herself in order to be able to move in a way that doesn't feel so binding. Because when you think extremes are binding. So I'm very open to hearing, but thank you for that. It's been a lot of years of my own work, and I still am working. Like in that case, like I may have said something like that, and um, so a lot of this new stuff that we learned in Beverly actually about rupture and repair. You know, I said, you heard, you're upset about it, and how can I meet where you're at and the impact it had on you, instead of just going, well, that's not what I meant. Right. So yeah, so a lot of work.
Yeah. And so, like, surprise, surprise, the work is inside of us. We always come back to that because I'm even just thinking, like, a lot of the work that I'll speak for myself, but I know Natalie, you've done a lot of the work too of, unlearning diet culture, and you have a client who comes in who really wants to lose weight or really, wants to have these really restrictive ways of showing up, or just even a lot of, critics about body. And it is really, really hard for me and my system to unblend because I want so badly for them to get the relief and like the peace and calm that comes with being further into that journey. I wonder if this is an okay time to ask this question, but something that we have been exploring is ways to unblend, ways to get into self energy. And I'm wondering, Diana, what ways you like to unblend or move more in towards self energy. Maybe even particularly like in a session, like outside of session feels a little bit more accessible, I think, for folks. But when you're sitting with someone,
Right.
curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. I was thinking in session, I'm also thinking back to Cease Sykes, and something that she will often say if somebody says, I really need you to write me, I need structure, I need a meal plan, I need you to tell me what to eat every day and in what amount. What is the attachment to that structure? Because structure means something different to me, but to them it means I'm told what to do. So I do try to, well, I did that before and it really worked. What was missing? What was missing for you that filled? And that's a question that can often take them into deeper places inside of themselves. And it lets me unblend from my WTF this again, right? When I'm right. So that, oh God, here we go again. The same questions, then it helps me unblend. What was missing for you when that proved to be so valuable? Other ways I do start sessions, I usually start in the morning before, a group of clients. And part of this spiritual mentorship practice is I have sort of a 4-breath prayer, if you will. And the first breath is to allow my Mother Earth to really reach up toward me so that I can feel her and I can settle into her. And then the second breath is to invite divine white light to fill me so that I can experience myself at my highest and be in the service of my clients at their highest. So that's a really nice way to start. And then asking my ego to sit next to me, parts of me that want to come in and offer, sit here and whisper to me what you want me to know that you're noticing, and then let me be the one that delivers that if we deliver that to the client. And then lastly, just so I can be a little bit more open and I can receive, my intuition can be at its highest. So I do that when I go in. And then if I notice a part in session, like, oh, what here we go again, I just ask it, it's all in a nanosecond to sit next to me, whisper what it needs me to know, and let the white light take over. So we're here. And sometimes part of that opening is also releasing in me what is not of service. And it's a lovely ritual that I've come to do quite often. So I can just kind of, okay, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that thought. I don't need, these kinds of things, right? These parts can sit next to me. Then when I'm in session, I can go back to that. I can just like re-envision what that was like for me to have that protection.
Yeah. Something that
It's
you
hard.
shared. Yeah, it is hard. And something, yes. Diana, I've had some consultation with you, thankfully and gratefully. And something that's really I have taken with me is one session we had where I was really having a hard time accessing any self energy. And we kind of went like that was almost the whole work of the session. It ended up being, barely about anything else, because of how important that is. And there was just a sense you gave me so much space to really sit with how it feels physically to be in self. and really like deepened that with me, and like just like really slowed down. I think for a good 10-15 minutes, even maybe just being like, how is it feeling? And I kind of described it, I think, as like a comforting heaviness, like a weight that feels good, like a weighted blanket. And something about those moments that we had there, like I can kind of access now a little bit more easy. Like that's how it feels. So it's kind of like that locked inside of me somewhere, or that was kind of settled inside of me somewhere, so I can come back to it a little bit more quickly. That was something you really helped me with, so thank you.
I'm glad to hear
And
that. So I
yeah,
think it's important that we have something. Sometimes I'll say, can you imprint this
right.
so that you and this part both will have this Polaroid and you know how to find each other? Because
Yes.
sometimes it
Yes.
even self is like that. Can you imprint what this
Yes.
felt like?
Yes.
A colleague of mine has something called expanding the field of awareness. And I do that meditation with folks where we just start by saying, imagine a place where everything's okay. Right. And we try to get into that part of the nervous system that's calm and green and, and really create this sense. And then once it's done, it's been described and felt. And I hear, okay, there's self energy here. Invite your part simply to notice. They can stay on the external, on the outside of this place that you're in, and just notice you. And sometimes that's a nice imprinting for them. And it is for me too, the imprinting that I do for myself.
Yeah. I love that, because we did that as well, I think, with an exile that we didn't have time to fully unburden inside my system. So we kind of, I think you said like a Polaroid, and she was in there, and now I can come back to her pretty
Yeah.
accessibly. Yeah, I love that little
Yeah.
tool. Yeah.
Because we forget, when we're deep inside, we can't often remember everything that happened
Yeah.
when we were inside with our parts. So sometimes just having a body memory or some type of a thoughtful imprint that we can hold on to.
Natalie,
I just
you're
like,
grinning.
I
You're grinning.
am, because I just feel like this is so rich and so full. And I just feel so thankful to you, Diana, for coming on and sharing so much of your wisdom and experience and self with us. And I was thinking, like, all the questions that I had as you were speaking, like you kind of just answered them as we kept going. And so yeah, I truly just feel like this was more than I could have hoped for with the start of People Who Know More Than Us. And so glad that you're here and that we started with you. And selfishly, like I said, I'm like, I hope people get something from this episode, and if they don't, I sure did. So I am curious if there's anything that we missed, just, or anything else that you want to name, or anything you want us to know, or just want to share that we didn't ask, or
Nuggets of wisdom you can drop on us.
I think maybe the only thing, have we talked about the storybook I'm writing?
No.
Okay, so I'm writing a storybook about my clients and their journey using IFS. And so to write it as a book or an educational book or a teaching book or a workbook didn't feel right in my system. And there was a very dull energy around it. But it was suggested to me by a wise person, what if you told a story? And my system lit up and I thought, this is it. So I'm writing a story with their full on permission, my clients, and I am de-identifying as much as I can. Some it's okay that I don't. And I'm really, really, really loving it. So I've shifted my practice. I've got a morning writing practice. I have an afternoon client practice. Fridays are my consultation days. And so it feels, and then time to work with my own parts, obviously, and developing this sort of spiritual aspect of me and the intuitive quality. All of that just feels so rich. Taking a writing class, and I have an editor, and I'm just learning so much. And I'm always looking for volunteer readers. Like, would you take a look at this? And I'm kind of stuck on the stories. I don't get stuck on. It's now trying to demonstrate why traditional approaches don't work. I'm like, oh, I just get, there's so much There's so much. It's almost overloaded information. And what do I put in there? And I don't want this to be a research chapter and, so that kind of thing. So that's probably the only thing
That's so cool.
that's going on right now. My parts have opened up and really, really are letting me dive into all of this.
Yeah. So cool. What are the parts that are loving it? I feel like there's some like excited, energized parts. What are the parts that are loving that you're being able to kind of be creative in this way?
Yeah. Yeah. Just really opening up, and I don't know if you know Bryden Jodin. He's in North Carolina, and he's an IFS coach and has been for 25, 30 years. And he has a gifts program where he helps people identify what are your gifts and which one of those are hidden, which ones have been tucked away for fear of, what will people think. And so he was very instrumental in a session with him about what started out as a gifts session turned into an IFS session, which was brilliant on his part for noticing the way my system was leading. And it just opened up like a channel of creative flow and freedom. And someone's going to be on the backside checking me out. And, I've got readers and they're going to kind of keep me in line. And so there's no risk.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm so excited. I mean, I know it's still in the works, but I'm already so excited to read it.
I know. What a cool resource for. Do you know what it will be named, or is it all under wraps still?
I don't know the name, and my editor has asked me, what are these titles to the chapters that you're given? And I said, they're what come to me, and I will put them down for now. And it starts with the words.
Yeah.
And that's what the title is. The words were spoken, the words were heard, the words were taken in, the words were understood, the words were revealed. So depending on what part of the IFS 6Fs or self energy, the word was. And so I said, just hang with me. We may lose them, but hang with me and let's see what happens at the end. And if they stay, if they don't, if they change, we'll just see. But for right now, that's what's speaking to me. It's just to really open and ask spirit to let the words flow from them through me to the paper.
Beautiful. So beautiful. I love it. I'm wanting to give a bit of space here to Diana. So you are open to new clients or full?
I am open. Excuse me. I am open to new clients. I am full. So I know that's speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but I find like now that I'm not taking insurance and I'm letting go of one more insurance. So I think I've got a few clients that are going to go to monthly instead of every other week. So that's going to open up some time. And others just, I've got long-term clients, but then I've got some that just bounce in and out or come back and forth. So I'm always open if they, I feel like I'm at a very privileged, and I know that word, excuse me, might be overused, but I feel like I'm in a place of saying yes to the client that I can be most useful to.
Right.
And to say no to the ones that I feel like I'm not going to be as useful or helpful. And what's curious now that I'm confident in myself about that, they hear it not as I don't want to work with you, but thank you for knowing someone who will be. So I always do it with a referral. And so that's been really nice. So I'm always open, to that. I do have 2 more spaces in my 3rd consultation group, and always open to the idea of a 4th one because they bring so much joy to me. And the people who are presenting are so authentic and so inspiring to me. And the groups feel very well, everyone is welcome and they belong. And it feels like my next place, when you listen. Like I knew in 2018, you need to stop teaching yoga. I just knew it. I could tell nobody why I was doing it. I just know it's time. And I did. So now I'm in this place of, I just know it's time, that it's okay to open up another group or it's okay to take another client.
Yeah.
We'll find a way.
Yeah. And you are an IFS certified consultant. So anyone who is looking for approved out, no, you're not.
No,
I'm not, because
I take it back.
take it back because the Institute I was recommended twice for the trainer track.
Yeah.
And when I inquired about it through the Institute, I was told that my credentials don't allow that. Because if I taught a portion of a training, the participants could not get credit for it because it wasn't as a clinical therapist.
Mm.
And so I got off of that track, obviously, and you've seen my last several years have been the new direction that I'm going.
Yes.
So I'm still looking forward to the March 28th is the second town hall
Right.
that IFSI is offering to anyone who wants to be in discussion around the new admissions policy change.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel very grateful that I am where I am in the model.
Right.
But I would like to know, hey, can we have a practitioner track? Can we have a medical practitioner track? And can practitioners be certified, approved consultants for practitioners who want to be certified? Right.
Yeah.
So that
Sure.
that's my intention.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's been sent out there.
And needed. Yeah. Well, even as uncertified approved, whatever the languaging is, every moment that I spend with you, I learn so much. And I know that that's a theme that probably lots of folks who spend time with you share. So anyone who is wanting to learn more about their system or the model or consultant, sounds like any capacity, Diana, like dietitians or, practitioners, therapists alike,
Right.
you are loving being in that space. And so, yeah.
All are welcome.
Love it. And
Well,
we'll put some of your stuff in the show notes too. We'll get the chapter, the book that you have contributed to. We'll get some of your information and put it in the show notes so that folks who want to be able to learn more about you or get in touch or learn from you can find you that way.
Thank you.
With your permission, of course.
Absolutely. And I have had that book added to my website, which it hasn't been. I had this like, aha, you could do that. And the audiobook is coming out hopefully in the summer.
Yay.
So yeah, so we're going to have an audiobook of it. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. I got over my fear of recording.
Oh, and your voice is so soothing. You have a great voice for like an audiobook.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Well,
it was fun.
Yeah. Diana, thank you so much for coming on and for being a Partsy girl today. And yeah, this has been so meaningful, and my heart feels so full to just have had this time and all this conversation and to just learn from you, and so I know I'm fully confident that this will be helpful to people who are listening, whatever their capacity is, if they're whatever they do with IFS, it'll be helpful. And so I'm just so grateful that you chose to spend this time with us. So thank you so much.
I was very excited that you asked.
I have parts that have a vision of maybe a second episode together down the line. Because I have 100 more questions. I think that there's so much more in this, and to be determined. But I'll be back one day. Maybe.
That would be welcome. I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet.
Well,
thank you,
Diana.
Yeah. And for our listeners, stay tuned for the next episode of People Who Know More Than Us, featuring someone else who knows more than us.
One of the many.
Yeah. But thanks for listening. And as always, if there's something more that you wanted, you can let us know on our Instagram at Partsy Girls Pod. And you can also email us, although no one does, at partsygirlspod@gmail.com. So we'd love to hear from you if there's anything you want us to know, or if anything that we don't put out that you want to know more about Diana, then feel free to let us know. So yeah.
Back in a few weeks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.